I am Nico, welcome back to the channel. Finally, we are here today to talk about emotion in photography. I am assuming you saw the previous two videos, so you know why we're here. Let's get straight into it. So, when thinking about making this video, which took many weeks, it felt wrong to go as analytical and as detailed as I went with information. Emotion is its own thing, and I think it's where a lot of the creativity happens in photography, because if your subject doesn't engage the audience emotionally, and that happens, you're assigned to photograph something that's not really engaging, then it's your job, and that's when your creativity kicks in as an artist or as an operator, to create an emotional connection with the audience with other tools than just showing them something exciting. Beyond the simple, like, yes, next. I think it's like the story about the frog. You can't really explain creativity or emotion. It would be like dissecting a frog. You may understand it better, but the frog dies in the process. So I'm going to try to be light-handed here and not go too heavy on the explanation or the dissection of any single idea. I should also probably define emotion for the purpose of this video. I use emotion in the broadest possible sense. Anger, happiness, whatever you want, but also is an emotion, and aha. Anything that makes your audience react beyond the simple, like, yes, next. Also, in the spirit of creativity and randomness, instead of going through my portfolio or going through successful pictures, I went through random folders in my almost 20 years archive and picked random pictures that illustrated the points that I'm trying to make. Unlike what I normally show on the channel, which is either a work in progress or a finished keeper, here you're going to see pictures that mostly I've never shown and will never show again, because they are not really that successful, but they have at least one aspect that is emotional, or that is an illustration of what could have been done to make it succeed. Hope this makes sense. Let's go for it. So emotion, the first thing I can think about is as opposed to information. Emotion will happen whenever there is something that is not shown in your picture. I'm thinking strong contrast, I'm thinking a lot of blurs. This is when the subjectivity of your audience kicks in. This is when the brain will try to fill in the holes and will try to complete the story, and so this is why those pictures, in my opinion, are perceived as very emotional. Let's start with this. This guy came to my studio for a test a couple of months back. We shoot this picture. It's a nice portrait. I don't feel a lot about it. Then I put him on black. The light on his face hasn't really changed, but I made him change to a black sweater and I switched to a black background. I think you'd agree this is more emotional right away, because there's so much hidden. So much of the surface of the picture is up to our own interpretation. Can I hide even more? Yeah, I can make it blurry. I drag the shutter, I use the modeling lights instead of the strobe, and the guy is even less recognizable, but the picture is so much more emotional. So everything you don't show in a picture, either with strong contrast, underexposure, overexposure, or with blur, you are allowing room in the picture for the viewer to project their own emotions into those areas you're not defining. Of course, this was quite extreme, and in the end I think we ended up with that picture as our favorite from the session. Here it's showing enough, it's hiding enough. I think it's a good picture for him that's usable. A corollary to that is what I'll call hyper-reality. A picture that is so sharp, with such depth of field and such even illumination, think HDR or think extremely sharp pictures, will also provoke an emotion and a feeling of wow or huh. So hyper-reality can be the opposite of hiding things and leaving room for interpretation. Another way to hide things from your viewer, or to leave room for interpretation to come in, is to crop aggressively, leave key elements out, or crop elements out that normally would be in the picture. This takes us neatly to this next picture, a very aggressive and original crop from me here. And what can work here in transmitting emotion is not really what I left out, but the subversion of how you would normally expect that picture to be cropped. It just surprises the viewer and it forces you to look twice and try to figure out what's happening and why I made this very, very strange choice. Not saying this is a great successful picture, but it is more emotional than if I had cropped that dog in the way that you would expect to crop. So this idea of no, come here. So this idea of subverting an expectation leads us neatly into the next point, which is juxtaposition. Of course, a juxtaposition in subjects of two things that don't belong together or that oppose each other or say different things. For example, that lady's very sporty cycling gloves and helmet juxtaposed to how kept her nails are. But they can also be a juxtaposition in your techniques as a photographer, the juxtaposition of a small subject in a very large frame. This provokes an emotion, or the juxtaposition of a large subject in a tight frame. This also provokes an emotion. So don't just look for juxtapositions of subjects, but if there is nothing to contrast your subject with, you can still contrast and juxtapose by playing on scales, playing on light, playing on other tools that you control. So next up are ideas of composition. A close-up, because of the same mechanics we just described, always creates a different emotion than a wide frame. You can also saturate your frame by putting as many things as possible in there, as opposed to narrowing it down to just one thing. These are ways you can manipulate how the audience is going to perceive the picture. Another compositional tool is attention. Play with the edges of the frame, play with the center, put things over negative space, and if you create tension in a composition, which is a concept we could spend a whole video on, that is also a vector for emotion. You've probably been expecting this one. Color, of course, is a strong conveyor of emotion. Whether you go monochrome, one dominant color in the frame, either a red or a blue, or you can go with complementary colors. A red and a cyan always create a contrast that just has the potential to move people, or maybe a yellow with colder colors. But one thing that people don't always think about is just the general color atmosphere of the picture. Here I'm taking this at blue hour, so I know the scene is going to render very cold to the film I'm using. It's going to be blue or cyan, but my strobe is balanced to daylight, so my strobe is going to render neutral. So here I drag my shutter speed slow enough that the ambient has an opportunity to seep into the picture and to expose the background and the areas that my strobe don't reach. And then I create this cold, warm opposition. So here I'm just using color as the general vibe. If I had left the strobe exposed that whole picture, it would have been neutral. I'm just dragging my shutter speed and getting it blue. So you can introduce colors that are not really in the scene just by doing that, or if you're using digital, you can play with your white balance. Look at this picture, and now this one. The only difference between the two is that I moved the white balance way to the cold colors. I changed no other setting, and it makes a radical impact in emotion. So let's look at a few more pictures and see if there's any points that I've forgotten to make so far. In this picture, the emotion comes from that background and that glow and that haziness of the render. Of course, it's actual fog, and it's not something that's in your control as an operator of the camera, but you can always use very good lenses and choose the right aperture, and you can get that kind of subject separation. And the best lenses do have a way to render the out of focus areas with much less contrast than the in focus areas. Something to think about, and that's why I rarely shoot wide open or crazy bokeh apertures. I usually shoot f4 on to f5.6 on small format and f8 on medium format, because I like that subtle loss of contrast that you get in out of focus areas. People call that effect painterly. Here it's a matter of juxtaposition, I'd say. Those silhouettes, which are obviously just painted onto the windows, all look to be having a blast, and we have this guy walking by with a very tense attitude, taking a big drag of his cigarette. So it's a juxtaposition of what you'd expect in this picture and what you're getting, and also the fact that the sun is reflecting straight into his glasses. That's a subversion of your expectation, because he is a silhouette, and instead of being all dark as a silhouette should be, he suddenly gets this very light spot that breaks the expectation of how he is represented. This picture, so you have this guy chilling, he just finished his third whiskey and coke. Not much happening emotion-wise. If I wait 10 seconds, his body is in what looks to be a very uncomfortable position, so right away the emotional charge of the picture is upped by this gesture. And I get the two old people who are looking at him seemingly in judgment. This is no longer a guy who's chilling after having 3 whiskey and cokes. This is a drunk who is embarrassing everyone around him. So see the emotional charge, how it has shifted, because a couple of things in my composition have shifted, and because of the timing in which I took the picture. So I think that's what I got on this topic. Obviously there has to be more out there, but it's up to you to find it. I think if your subject is not inherently a powerful subject that transmits emotion, and it will happen sometimes that you're assigned to just photograph a random thing, then it is your job, and it is the creativity in your job is to find a way to make that picture have an emotional charge and to make the audience connect with the picture, even if what you're shooting is just a product on white background or a random scene for the local press. So of course there will always be new ways invented by creative people to transmit emotion through their photographs, and I could not list them all, and it's exciting to me whenever I encounter a new one. So I think that was it for emotion. Thank you for tuning in. Go out, play with it, have fun. I think I will make pretty soon a last video in this series, trying to mention things that don't fit neatly on the information versus emotion scale, but still are worth mentioning and do bear some weight on the success of a picture. One obvious one that came to me while researching was presence. Do you detect the presence of the photographer within an image or not? That is an element in the success of the picture, and maybe you guys can come up with some of your own suggestions, and we will review all of that in a last video. Until then, take care, bye.